Hello, everyone, and welcome to AP US History for Winners with your teacher, Mr. Johnson. Last time we talked about the rise of industrial capitalism and labor in the Gilded Age, and today we are talking about immigration and migration and the responses to that immigration in the Gilded Age. So, if you are ready, let's begin. The first thing to think about and figure out is why people are moving to America or why people are moving within America. So we're going to get an expansion of the industrial workforce, which means that more people are going to be moving towards cities to get jobs in factories. And the population of America is going to become more diverse because people are moving within America. That's internal migration. And people are moving to America from other countries. That's international migration. So first, let's look at internal migration. Who's moving within the United States? Well, a lot of farmers are going to move towards cities to work in factories. That's where the jobs are. Because of new technology, America needs less people to work on farms, and America needs more people to work in factories thanks to industrialization. So a lot of farmers are moving towards cities. That's called urbanization. Sorry, it's called urbanization. And then African Americans are also going to move within the South and out of the South to escape discrimination, racism, but also to escape sharecropping in their economic status in the South. And this is a really important issue of the South needing to figure out where they're going to get labor. Where is their labor going to come from? Is it going to come from African Americans? Is it going to come from immigrants? What is going to happen in the South? That's a really important question for the South and the city of the New South. They're trying to build this industry, right? So make sure we understand this concept. That's a really important one. Where is the South going to get their labor? They're trying to figure all this out as African Americans are feeling pushed away. Are they going to accept immigrants? Are they not? This is kind of an issue that they need to figure out. Okay, so as far as international migration, so who's coming to America from other places, we're going to get some people we call quote unquote new immigrants in this time period. And so these are people from Southern and Eastern Europe. So these are places like Italy, in Poland that are coming to work in the cities in America to get jobs. All right. And there's also a large increase in immigration for Chinese immigration, and then it kind of stops at a certain point. And so it stops because of a law called the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. Star this one, bold it, underline it. This is a really important law, and it's a very big example of something called nativism, which we've talked about, and kind of the feelings on immigration. So we had a lot of Chinese immigration coming in before 1882 into the West Coast of America. We talked about this before, predominantly like working in cities like San Francisco, but also building railroads. And a lot of people felt a lot of white laborers felt that there was competition for jobs, and they blamed a lot of the Chinese people for this competition. And so we get this immigration law passed, the Chinese Exclusion Act, which bans Chinese immigration. It's a very important law to know. It's going to be really good and helpful for you for like evidence to use on like an SAQ or DBQ or LEQ or something. Okay. So we also need to think about, again, why do people come to America or move within America? The main reason is to escape poverty, to find money. That is the main reason. But they're also looking for trying to avoid religious persecution. A lot of Jewish people are moving to America, especially Jewish people in Russia are moving towards America. But the main idea is to escape poverty. And there's this guy you see the name here, Horatio Alger, and he writes these books that are all about this idea of rags to riches, right? So the thought of like in America, you can make it, you can come in poor and you can be very successful as an immigrant. You can make as much money the harder you work. And in fact, Andrew Carnegie was a Scottish immigrant, came to America, and he became one of the richest people in the world, right? So there's examples of that happening. And so that rags to riches, escape poverty idea is really important. But also there's a lot of religious persecution that people are trying to escape. Okay, so where are the people moving, right? A lot of the people are moving, these immigrants and migrants are moving towards cities. And so we're going to start to see urban neighborhoods are going to be based on particular ethnicities, races, and classes. So we're going to see urban neighborhoods start to kind of develop their own culture, their own vibe. And these qualities of urban neighborhoods are going to create new cultural opportunities for people living in cities. So cities are going to see huge growth thanks to factories, thanks to businesses, thanks to these jobs. A lot of the international migrants that we've talked about are going to move to cities. Chinese immigrants and other Asian immigrants are moving towards the West Coast, working on railroads. And these new immigrants we talked about, like with Italy, with Poland, are moving towards on the East Coast. Okay, kind of makes sense with their geography. And then these urban neighborhoods, right? We said that they kind of have a unique culture, unique vibe, and they're often based on that ethnicity, race, and class. An example for you from Connecticut is Little Italy in New Haven. So if anyone's ever been down to Pepe's Pizza or Sally's Pizza or Worcester Street, you see pictured here on the right. This becomes like an urban neighborhood in New Haven that is predominantly Italian. And it provides new cultural opportunities for Italian people moving to these areas because people can speak Italian, they can eat the Italian food that they're used to, and it kind of creates this cultural area that people feel comfortable with. And we see these pop up all over. Like you've heard of Little Italy, you've heard of Chinatown, these other types of places. If you've heard about in different cities, that's what we're talking about. That's where these areas become a thing. Okay, in the late 1800s. All right, so as people are moving to America, there is debates over something called assimilation. Okay. Assimilation is when people adapt to American culture or become quote unquote American. Okay. And so there's a lot of debates over should immigrants have to adapt? Should they have to assimilate? Or should they have be their own culture and not have to adapt or become quote unquote American, whatever that means. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of compromise, and a lot of immigrants are going to try to take culture that they have, from where they're come from and bring it to America. And they're going to kind of take parts of it and take parts of American culture and kind of all adapt. And that's kind of what ends up happening with assimilation. But assimilation is occurring because of all this migration. Now, all this migration and these debates over assimilation, though, are going to lead to something called nativism. Now, we've talked about nativism before in the mid 1800s, and it's going to come up again. Now, nativism is the idea that immigrants are not good, right? That people born in America are what America should be focusing on, all right? And so we see this pop up again. And anytime we see large part of immigration in America, we're going to see nativism become a thing. And in the late 1800s, we're going to get groups like the American Protective Association, the APA, and they want to limit immigrants from coming into America at all. And they want to try to keep Catholics from holding office because there's a big view that Catholics are going to be beholden to the Pope in Italy, who is the leader of the Catholic religion, instead of to the American government. Okay. So this is very similar to the Know Nothing Party of the 1850s. So there's some connections you can make there between the American Protective Association and the Know Nothing Party. But like I said earlier, immigrants are often going to kind of compromise between their own cultures and their U.S. cultures, and they're going to kind of blend and fuse the two. The second generation is more likely to assimilate than the first generation. So meaning the first generation would be immigrants who were born, let's say, in Italy and moved to America. They're going to assimilate less than their children. Their children are going to assimilate more because of things like schools, right? So public schools in America are going to be a way that people are going to assimilate and adapt to American culture. For example, public schools teach English, right? And only teach English at this time. And so that is going to be a way that these second generation immigrants are going to adapt and to assimilate. Okay, so along with this idea, all these ideas of immigration and migration towards the cities, we also need to keep in mind that a lot of businesses are growing big, right? We've talked about that in our last lesson, and a lot of the rich are going very rich. And so there comes this idea called social Darwinism. And this is a theory to justify the success for the very rich and to make sense of the socioeconomic system and structure that America has, of the few people being very rich and everyone else, in the lower or middle class. And so what is social Darwinism? It's the survival of the fittest, the ideas of Charles Darwin from biology, okay, that's applied to humans and applied to business. And it's going to be used for businesses to be able to use any tactics they need or that they want to prosper. And it's really a way to justify the success of the wealthy, that it's appropriate and inevitable for the wealthy to be successful and everybody else is not successful because, well, they're not quote unquote the fittest, right? So this is going to kind of justify mistreatment of different immigrant groups, to justify mistreatment of different racial groups and genders, right? So social Darwinism is a way to justify the new growing wealth gap between different groups of people in American society. Okay, so it's an important concept to understand social Darwinism. Again, it's applying Charles Darwin's theory of biology towards like socioeconomic and class issues. Okay. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about today is about women in the late 1800s and the role that women play in society. Okay. So women are going to increasingly seek greater equality with men. And they're going to do this in a number of different ways. We're going to break down the different ways. Okay. First of all, they're going to join a lot of organizations. They're going to volunteer for a lot of organizations to try to get their opinions voiced out. Remember, in the late 1800s, women cannot vote in America. Okay. And so, how are they going to get political equality is through these different ways, right? So the organizations they join, a couple of them to know, maybe I would have one of these in your head: the National Association Women Suffrage, sorry, the National American Women Suffrage Association. This is a group that's going to try to get women the right to vote, and eventually it's going to get women the right to vote in 1920. We'll talk about that later. But that this again, they're joining groups to try to protest to get women the right to vote. And another group or movement that women are associated with in the 1800s is the temperance movement. So the Women's Christian Temperance Union is trying to support a ban of alcohol. And there's a number of reasons why women are kind of the four leaders of the movement to ban alcohol. If you think about ideas like domestic abuse, but also ideas of like productivity, women are going to try to push for this, and eventually alcohol is going to be banned. We'll talk about that, and then later in another unit with the 18th Amendment. Okay, so joining volunteer organizations is one way. Another way is going to college. So a lot of women start to go to higher education. There's going to be new women's colleges that are going to emerge during this time. So these are colleges that are specifically for women, like Vassar College, which is a college in New York. So with more education is going to come more equality and more economic equality in the long run. All right, two other ideas. Women are going to seek greater equality with men by promoting social and political reform. And this is an important name to know. Elizabeth Cady Stanton is a suffragist, which means that's somebody who wants to get women the right to vote. Suffrage means the right to vote. Okay. And she's also an advocate of interracial marriage. And she's a really important person to know, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, pushing for social and political reform. And then the last way women are going to seek to get greater equality with men is by working in settlement houses to help immigrants. So this person is really important to know, Jane Addams. I would star her, Jane Addams, and I would star Elizabeth Cady Stanton. These two individuals are really important. Okay, so Jane Addams is going to create something called the Hull House, which you see pictured here on the right in Chicago. And the Hull House is a settlement house. What's a settlement house? A settlement house is basically, I want you to think of it like almost like a boys and girls club, okay? It's going to help immigrants, women, and children assimilate to society. It's going to help them with education, jobs, food, housing, clothing, all those kind of things, okay? So settlement houses are designed to help the people in society that the government is not helping because of that whole laissez-faire idea. All right, so Jane Addams is a really important figure to know about with the settlement houses. College Board loves to talk about Jane Addams. Elizabeth Cady Stanton is another really important figure to understand and to know about. Okay, so that is it for our notes on immigration and migration, plus responses to immigration in the Gilded Age. We also talked about some women's rights issues. So let's review and recap with our big ideas. Number one, what were the causes of immigration in the Gilded Age? We talked about two main ones, okay? The second big idea, what were the effects of immigration in the Gilded Age? There were some positive effects. There are also some negative effects, okay? So what are the effects of immigration? And three, describe the role of women in the late 19th century with specifics. Name some people, name some places. We got to understand and remember those people and places. All right, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.